Hey, how's it going, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Johnny, and in today's video we are going to go over the emulation in the iPod Classic. So when I'm talking about the iPod Classic, I'm talking about the 5th generation iPod Classic, the 1st generation iPod Nano, and the 2nd generation iPod Nano. So believe it or not, this little device could actually run a couple of emulator games on here that we're going to be discussing in this video. So yep. Alright, so in this part of the video we're actually going to be explaining on how the Homebrew modification of the iPod Nano works, or how everything works with the iPod Nano being able to emulate certain games on it. So as you guys can see on the iPod Nano right here, we have the stock OS, which comes with the Apple iPod that you actually get when you buy it, and this is basically everything that's stock. It really doesn't bring that much options. Believe it or not, it does have some extra games that you can actually play on here, and a stopwatch and simple little smart applications that you can do with this. If you guys can see, they had it included like these little small games like Parachute, which is pretty dope, I think. And this is basically the simple OS. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be replacing the OS with a thing called Rockbox. And basically what Rockbox is, it allows you to do much more stuff with the iPod Nano, and basically it's the OS for Homebrew. Basically allows you to emulate games, and it also allows you to do some other stuff like play formats that you usually couldn't play on the iPod Nano. So it is compatible with a lot of different iPods that I'll be explaining later. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is search up on Google Rockbox for the iPods. You don't really have to put anything else, just put Rockbox and it'll be the first link to pop up in the search web browser. So now I know I made a mistake in the video. I called it Rocketbox or whatever. It sounded more better, but it's actually Rockbox, guys. I made a mistake. Alright, so you guys can actually see that here it brings every stable port that it has, and it's actually compatible with other devices, believe it or not, like other old school MP3 players or MP4 players, whatever they used to call them. But as you guys can see, this is the Apple section where it's actually compatible through iPod 1G through 5.5G. So even the older ones that don't even have a color screen are actually compatible with the Rockbox firmware, and even the iPod mini, iPod Nano 1G, and the iPod Nano 2G. As you guys can see, they have other products that were available with this. I remember that the SanDisk Sansa was actually a pretty cool one to actually have Rockbox on as well. And as you guys can see, they have unstable ports, which actually they did manage to port it over to the iPod Classic 6th generation, but I heard a lot of things about it that it was just a really bad unstable port that a lot of people decided not to go ahead and actually use it. Alright, so it actually has an installer, which they really made it simple for people to actually be able to just install it by connecting the device to the computer. So as you guys can see, you go ahead and get the installer from a Windows area, and let's go ahead and get the first one. It should be really easy to install, and you're gonna want to have WinRAR or something to open the files up, so make sure that you have WinRAR or any extraction software in order to do this. So as you guys can see, I'm gonna extract it to my desktop over here, and we're gonna go ahead and open it up. So okay, so we have Rockbox utility right here, and you just want to go ahead and run it as administrator, and you should be set to go. Alright, sorry guys, I know I have some other stuff on my other screen because I have like a dual monitor. So let's just go ahead and say okay. This will be one of the first things that pops up into it. So the next thing that you're gonna want to do is actually it's gonna have your device. You're gonna select the device that you have here. This will pop up and it'll say what device do you have. Obviously we have an Apple iPod 2G, and as you guys can see, the iPod Nano 2G stable. It auto detects it automatically, and then all you have to do is press OK, and then you will come up to this utility which says a stable release 3.14. It's already detected on the computer, and all you have to do is you can back up your stuff. If you want to back up your current installation or stuff like that, you can do all that. Accessibility, you can install voice files and create talk files. You can install the main Rockbox firmware, additional fonts for the user interface, themes, adjusting the user interface. You can customize them as well.
And actually it's actually pretty cool that if you do use the themes, because it's better to actually have a theme on this, because if you use the regular theme it kind of looks kind of ugly. So go ahead and choose any theme that you personally like. So it will just make it look better, your interface, if you choose a theme. Trust me, it will make everything look way better. So pick a theme that you like. It doesn't matter which one you like, but they all do the same thing. We're just gonna go ahead and click the first one, for example, and then you're gonna want to go ahead and install. So once you install that, just give it a little bit of time, and you know, they make the process so simple for you to install it that it's pretty awesome how simple they make it. But I can't even believe they made it like the easiest way to install this. Just connect your device to your computer and then let it do all the work while it's extracting the files. Alright, so it is already installed, I believe, 100%. As you guys can see, downloading boot file, everything seems to be installed, the themes, everything seems to be installed, and after that you pretty much have your device installed with Rockbox. Alright, so the next thing, we're gonna go back into the iPod Nano to actually see what's going on.
Alright, so we managed to install Rockbox OS successfully onto our device, and believe it or not, you can actually boot up the original menu of the OS stock for Apple devices. You can actually boot back to it if you want to go back and listen to your music that way, or you can use the Rockbox OS, which is the new one that we installed, which I personally prefer because it has Homebrew applications and it has games that you can play with emulators. The first thing that I'm going to show you is how to shut down Rockbox so you can boot back into your original OS if you have a preference to go back to the original OS, because I know some people want to go back to it. And it's pretty simple. You hold the play button and it shuts down. Alright, so this is the step where it actually takes a little bit, kind of like a little bit of work, because you have to do it really quick in order for you to boot back to the original OS. So you're going to want to click the play button once and then switch the button on top to hold, where you can actually see that we did it right now. We managed to successfully switch it. So click the play button and then switch to hold, and it'll take you back to the original OS menu on the iPod, which is pretty dope. And it takes a little bit while to load, and after doing that you can just release it and you'll be able to use the original OS menu that you want for the iPod. Alright, so I actually want to exit this OS because we're obviously exploring the other OS. It's simple, just go ahead and hold the menu and the center button and your iPod should restart. As you guys can see, it restarts. Don't press anything else. Leave it how it is, and you should be able to boot back up to the Rockbox OS. And now we're into the Rockbox OS. It has a lot of features, guys. You can switch the themes if you want. There's settings for that, which I believe are right here, that allows you to switch your theme if you want to go back to your general theme. But the most interesting thing that I like about Rockbox is basically the plugins area, because this is where the Homebrew applications are at. Let's go and start with demos. These demos, I don't really know what they do. They basically allow like certain animations to pop up, which is, I guess, somewhat cool. But it's nothing to look over. I mean, it looks pretty dope. The only thing I have issues sometimes is returning to the main menu, because the Rockbox controls are pretty weird at certain times. Alright, let's see if I can actually go back. Yeah, it's there we go. We managed to go back, and as you guys can see, they have different ones. You can start the demo with fireworks, a bunch of stuff that just pops up like there. You can click on it and then it has like fireworks. It's just little novelty stuff that you really aren't going to be using a lot if you're using the Homebrew. It's just little fun stuff that they decided to add. Alright, so as you guys can see, it has a bunch of other stuff. It even has the metrics, VU meter, a bunch of stuff on here. Alright, so let's go ahead and go back and let's look at the applications that it brings. So as you guys can see, it brings an alarm clock, and this one for some reason didn't work. So I don't know, some plugins work out of the box, some tend to have glitches. It has a battery bench, which I really do not know what this does actually. And then it has a calculator that you can use, but I don't know, you have to I guess you have to exit out. press the menu to cancel the test. Alright, so sorry about that. Menu to cancel that, and then you guys can see calculator, which is pretty dope. And I guess the coolest one on the plugins, sorry, it's kind of hard to navigate through this. The coolest one on the applications, I would assume, is definitely the paint application. As you guys can see, it has dictionary, lamp, several different stuff that you can do. Remote control, rock paint, stopwatch, text editor. It has so many options that you can do on here, which is pretty dope. But those are kind of like the homebrews, I would say, for the application of this iPod stuff. Alright, so the next thing that we're gonna go is actually we're gonna go ahead and try out Doom. And believe it or not, Rockbox brings everything installed in automatically once you use the utility, which is something really cool because look, you don't have to struggle with installing crap later on this Rockbox software. You don't have to struggle. It installs everything for you. It installs pretty much the coolest homebrew and apps and games that you can get on here. So Free Doom is one of the ones I wanted to showcase simply because it's probably the best one on here. The games allows you to choose your game, new game, and allows you to choose your menu. See, you can take out your gun, I believe, like that, and then you can start shooting and you can walk around. It's kind of weird though, I'm not gonna lie. And the enemies are pretty much shooting at me. Alright, dude, watch out, enemy, I'm gonna shoot you. It runs pretty decently in my opinion. I'm trying to actually show you guys upper close a bit, and it runs decent. I would say it's not the best thing obviously, but it runs pretty well for an iPod. I'm not gonna lie, look at that. The gameplay, you can actually see some kind of, I don't even know if it's even real 3D to be honest, but it definitely tries to emulate the game. It's not the best version of the game, but it's still pretty dope. I don't really see it laggy as much, to be honest. It runs really smooth. Obviously this would be better on the iPod 5th generation, the regular iPod, the bigger one that has a bigger screen, because the resolution, I don't know if the resolution makes any difference, but since this is a smaller screen, it looks a little bit different, and it looks kind of worse because it's really hard. You could play the game on the small screen, but it's really hard in my opinion. And since I only had the iPod Nano, I didn't have the opportunity to try the 5G version. Alright, so it is kind of weird to go back into the main menu, which I don't know. I don't know if I have all the controls right, but for games like this, I usually just do this, and then it gives me the menu, and then I have to go like up and then to quit the game. You can even save it as well, as you guys can see. It's barely noticeable, but it does allow us to go back into the menu, as well as it has different types of games, which it has Jules. Let's see, Jules is another big one in my opinion. You can start the game and it gives you a pretty decent graphical layout of the game, believe it or not, which is kind of dope. Let's see if we can go back. I think it's okay. You just had to mess around with it. I'm gonna have to look up the controllers. I haven't had a chance to look up the controllers, but it did let me go back. And Invader Drox, which is kind of like an Invader, which is pretty dope as well. You get more games options here and stuff like that. Alright, so let's go into the quit of the game, and let's quit the game and go back. And they have, you can even get Pac-Man on here, which is called Pac-Box, but you have to find the ROM somewhere, which is pretty dope. And they just have a ton of other stuff. I think role-playing games are a thing here as well, like these. They're mainly role player. They have Solitaire, Space Rock, Sudoku. They have a lot of games that you can play on here, and some of them will be missing, but the majority part of the games, they will be in there. Some just have a error every time you load them. I don't know why exactly that is, but it may be because this is the iPod Nano or just other stuff that's quite annoying. Alright, so the main highlight of the iPod Nano being able to emulate is Game Boy Color games and Game Boy regular games. That is the main highlight. and I'm gonna show you guys how to install games on here for the Game Boy. So we're gonna go back into the computer, and we're gonna want to connect our iPod into the PC.
Alright, so I connected my iPod back to the PC, and you should be able to have the iPod recognized on your computer. And this step is actually pretty easy. We're gonna go into the root of the iPod, and we're gonna go ahead and create a folder that's called GBC. Now, I don't know if you can name it anything else, but I call it GBC because that's what the tutorials usually say to name it in order to have the games working on it. So the cool thing about Rockbox is that in the OS, the emulator is already integrated into the OS, so you don't have to download any additional applications. Rockbox comes with the OS in stock. Alright, so if you made this folder for the GBC folder, this is where you're gonna basically put your ROMs. So as you guys can see, I have Crystal in here, Pokemon Crystal, and I have as well Pokemon Yellow. You can install so many ROMs on here, and they're gonna work really well on the iPod Nano or the iPod 5G Classic, whatever version you have. And you can install a lot of ROMs. As you guys can see, they're only like a megabyte or probably 64 kilobytes just to install that. And after you do that, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much how you will have your ROMs installed into the Rockbox OS. It really doesn't take any more steps, and we're gonna go back into the Rockbox OS.
Alright, so we disconnected our iPod from the computer, and the next step is actually quite easy. All you have to do is disconnect your USB from the computer and go ahead and go into Rockbox Files. Like I said, the emulator is actually integrated into your iPod Nano or iPod 5G Classic, whatever you have. The emulator is already integrated into the iPod in order for you to actually access it. So go to the GBC folder, and you'll be able to find your ROMs here. You can find Pokemon Crystal, Pokemon Yellow, and Super Mario Land. So let's go ahead and start off with Pokemon Crystal. The reason I'm starting off with this one is simply because this is the Game Boy Color one, and you guys can see the colors on there. Now, it is pretty sensitive. As you guys can see, it types really fast. As you guys can see, the buttons feel kind of weird, but you can get used to them after a while. So as you guys can see how the buttons are kind of weird, like I'm going up and down like this, like they're so sensitive that you could go into the wrong area easily. So let's go ahead and start a new game. As you guys can see, you can say whatever you are, a boy, a girl. The text kind of appears pretty weird for some reason, and the simple reason because of that is because the reason why it appears weird is simply because you know, the screen is super small on the iPod Nano, that it just kind of looks weird in my opinion. It is still playable and somewhat readable, but you're gonna see that it does appear really weird. The text on it, like sometimes you can't barely read everything that it says. But the reason of that, I would assume, is simply because of the screen being small. So if you're actually playing this on a bigger iPod, like the iPod 5G, you should be able to have your screen better. But you know, everything seems to be running pretty well. In my opinion, it actually runs at full speed, and I think it even runs a little bit faster as well. The controllers are obviously a bit weird. I'm not gonna lie, they feel really weird. But as you guys can see, there's the start menu, and everything is just really sensitive on this touchpad spin wheel that it just feels weird at certain times. Like, okay, so as you guys can see, the buttons allow you to move everywhere, like the D-pad right here. Everything works really well. And then in order to access the select button, it's like there's like two different buttons here, and this one's probably like your B to go back, and then you can check your pack. It's kind of weird, I'm not gonna lie. And I think it allows you to save as well. Let's see. Yeah, it's kind of weird, guys. I'm not gonna lie, it's really weird because you're using this one to access the menu, and you're also using it like a button as well. Alright, so yeah, I don't know, it's really hard to control, I'm not gonna lie. Let's go ahead and go back and see a little bit more of this emulator. As you guys can see, the world is running 100% speed though. Now, I don't know if this can be fixed on the text. I believe it can be fixed if you're on a better screen or a bigger screen, but on the iPod Nano, it's just you're gonna have to live with it because it's just a really small screen. But it's still readable. I'm not gonna say it isn't readable, but it's pretty dope that it's running at full speed. And this is a Game Boy Color game, so that's why I decided to test this one out. Alright, so let's go ahead and see if we can test out the other one. I don't know how to go back to the menu. Usually what I do is I always put the hold button because I feel like that's like the only way to go back into the real menu. So as you guys can see, it always takes me back to the real menu. I do want to see the options and see if you can actually do something about it. Now obviously you can't really hear the sound because you have to literally put your headphones on, but it works if you have your headphones on, which is something that it has. Alright, so here's the screen size, scaled maintained ratio or scaled. Alright, so I think we could probably be able to fix that text issue. Let's see if it loads way better. Let's go back into it and see if the text issue. No, it still doesn't. But as you guys can see, as the ratio, it does. If you look at it, the ratio, the full screen is now on. Before it was only a little like. Before you could see that there was like black bars on the corner of each side, but you can put it into a full ratio. It doesn't really fix the text or anything, in my opinion, but it still looks pretty nice. I would put it full screen if I was definitely playing it on the iPod, and I don't really see any difference in the performance, so it still looks good. Alright, so yeah, it kind of does look better. Actually, the text does look a little bit better. Not the best, of course, obviously, but it still does a major improvement. And look at that. You're literally walking everywhere and it's running really well. Game Boy Color on the freaking on the freaking iPod Nano, and that's crazy. And it looks really small. Like if you take this from perspective, it's like super small. Alright, so I have to do this in order to access the menu. Let's see what other options the emulator actually gives us. Alright, sorry about that. I get confused every single time. It has sound, stats, set key, screen rotate. You can even rotate the screen. Max frame script. It allows you to do everything. And let's try out another game. So as you guys can see, oh my god, why did I do that? Alright, I wanted to see the intro the first time. Will it allow us to see the intro? Yes. I accidentally had pressed a button and that's why it didn't allow us to see the intro. But hey, the intro, it runs really smooth as well. I'm not gonna lie, it's running like really smooth. As you guys can see, I gotta focus out a little bit, but it looks really amazing on it. I just noticed that the intro looks pretty dope. Alright, so we're gonna try one more game. We're gonna go ahead and try. We're gonna go try Pokemon. Not Pokemon Yellow. There's no point in trying it, but as you guys can see, it runs as well. The text issue. Let's see if the text issue actually is a hassle or an issue here as well. Pokemon Yellow version, as you guys can see right there. It works, and the text option actually, the same thing, the same issue. It's not really a big deal though. I kind of expected that on the Pokemon games. All right, so Rock Boy, they call it Rock Boy. Super Mario Land is the next one, and this one doesn't really seem to have any text issues. Obviously, Mario doesn't have that many text words. Well, it seems like it does have some kind of text issues. Alright, so the gameplay, as you guys can see, this is so weird. Like this spin wheel is like really odd. It's like it controls it at the same time, but like you can't really press it like super hard or it'll mess up. But it's actually playable, believe it or not. This is actually playable. Alright, so I put pause somehow because of the middle buttons or something, which is kind of annoying because it's like really small. I guess if somebody practices a lot with it, they'll eventually get used to it, and won't make the mistake of pressing the pause button. But it actually is really playable, and believe it or not, the controllers don't seem that bad. Sorry if I moved it out of focus. They don't seem that bad to me. It's just the pause button. Well, obviously, it's because the iPod Nano is so small, in my opinion, is that if you have like big thumbs or stuff like that, it can be a pain to navigate through the controls. Otherwise, it's pretty dope. I think that's actually pretty much gonna cover the Game Boy part of it. If you have a bigger iPod, you should be able to emulate everything a little bit better. To the conclusion of our video, I think that the Rockbox OS developer did a really good job of bringing their own OS instead of running the original stock OS on iPod Classics or MP4 players. At the time, they did a really good job of redefining their own OS and having it be able to do so many much more functions than the device was originally intended to do. I mean, running emulators such as the Game Boy and Game Boy Color is another extra function that you could have had on these devices at the time. If you were using them or you got it for Christmas, it would have been pretty dope that you could play Game Boy games on your iPod, even though you're usually used to using it for music on the school bus or on your way to work, on the train, or on the bus. So that was actually pretty cool that you could actually play Game Boy games and relive older games. Now, I know the iPod Nano isn't really the best one, in my opinion, to play classic games for Game Boy because the screen is kind of small, so I think it would work better on a larger screen such as the iPod 5G, which a lot of people also had. But I have to say that it is pretty dope to have the functionality of being able to do that as well. And you could also play Doom on this device, and it was running pretty decent. I gotta say, I didn't feel like it was running pretty bad. If you were actually running Doom, which is kind of like a 3D game, semi 3D. I don't think it was fully 3D on the device, or it was. There was still some 3D in it. But anyways, it was running pretty much at a really good speed. I didn't really feel it lag a lot, but that was pretty impressive on what it could do. And just having the general option to add a lot of different mini games was pretty cool, and as well as some homebrew applications was pretty dope that they brought it into this device. So if you were in that era of MP4s, you probably would want it to install this on your MP4 because it would change your perspective on the stuff that you could do. You could just do much more with it, and you wouldn't be limited to just listening to music or watching photos or videos. You would be able to play video games on an emulator integrated into an OS, and with simple steps you could have done that at that time. Now obviously newer devices have way better emulation with other support for other consoles like 64 emulators, Game Boy Advance, but I gotta say, I gotta give credit where it's due. This devices was never intended to do that. They were just mainly intended to listen to music, even though the iPod did have a couple of games that you could play in it. Anyways, thanks for watching this video, guys. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the video, and if you ever did this to your iPod. Let me know, guys, what you think, and I hope you have a nice day. Make sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Thanks.